You know California for its coastline, its freeways, its gold-plated promises. 39 million people live here in cities that gleam and sprawl and never seem to sleep. But drive east, drive into the desert, climb into the mountains. Take a dirt road that your GPS says leads nowhere. Because California has another side that the tourism boards don't put on the posters. Scattered from the Mojave to the Sierra Nevada, from Death Valley to the Salton Sea, are towns that boomed and burned and fell silent. Towns that once held thousands of people with ambitions as big as the state itself. Now, they hold nothing but wind and rust and the particular silence that only empty places know. In this video, we're uncovering 9 secret ghost towns in California that Google Maps hides from you. Some still have buildings standing exactly as their last residents left them. One carries the darkest chapter in American civil liberties, and the one we're saving for last was supposed to be a utopia and ended up being one of the most haunting ruins in the entire state. Subscribe. Let's go find them. Number 9. Bodie, Llano County, the town frozen. At the moment, everyone left high in the eastern Sierra, at 8,400 feet elevation, where the wind never really stops and the winters can bury a building in snow. There's a ghost town that 200,000 people visit every year and still somehow feels forgotten. Bodie. Named after a prospector named Waterman S. Bodie, who found gold in these hills in 1859 and died in a blizzard before he could spend $1 of it. The real boom came in 1876 when the Standard Company hit a rich vein. Within 3 years, Bodie had 10,000 residents, 65 saloons, a red light district, a Chinatown, a daily newspaper, and a murder rate that made the town famous across the entire West. The local paper's morning greeting was reportedly, "Have we a man for breakfast?" Meaning, did someone get killed last night? One legend says a little girl's family was moving to Bodie from San Francisco. In her diary, she wrote, "Goodbye, God, I'm going to Bodie." The gold ran out, fires swept through. By 1942, the last mine closed. The last residents locked their doors, climbed into their cars, and drove away. They left dishes on tables. They left pool balls racked in the saloon. They left a hearse in the barn and coffins in the mortuary. They left everything because there was nowhere to take it that felt worth the trouble. California declared Bodie a state historic park in 1962. It has been maintained in arrested decay ever since, meaning the buildings are kept from collapsing, but nothing is restored or cleaned. Walk through Bodie today and you are walking through a town that stopped in the 1940s and has not moved since. There is also a legend. If you take anything from Bodie, even a nail, even a rock, you will be cursed with terrible luck until you send it back. The park receives packages every year with returned objects and letters describing the misfortunes that followed. Number 8. Cerro Gordo, Llano County, the silver mine that built Los Angeles. Perched at 8,500 feet in the Llano Mountains, overlooking the vast emptiness of Owens Valley, Cerro Gordo is a place that most Californians have never heard of, and yet without it, Los Angeles might not exist. In the 1870s, the silver and lead pulled out of these mountains kept Los Angeles alive. At a time when LA was still a dusty pueblo of a few thousand people, Cerro Gordo's wealth was funding its growth. Mule teams hauled silver bars down the mountain to ships waiting on Owens Lake. The ore from this single remote mountaintop was the single most important source of revenue flowing into what would become one of the world's great cities. At its peak, Cerro Gordo had over 4,000 residents, and the kind of reputation that comes with money and isolation, 7 saloons, multiple brothels, and a body count that rivals Bodie. Then, the silver ran thin. The mine cycled through zinc production, various revivals, long silences. For most of the 20th century, Cerro Gordo sat in decay, watched over by a series of caretakers. In 2018, a man named Brent Underwood bought the entire ghost town for $1.4 million and moved up the mountain full-time. He has been documenting the restoration on YouTube ever since uncovering artifacts, restoring buildings, living alone at 8,500 feet in a place that hasn't truly been inhabited in decades. In 2020, a fire destroyed the American Hotel, which had been standing since 1871. The loss was devastating. The work continues. You can visit Cerro Gordo by reservation. The road up is 8 miles of steep dirt, and the town sits in the kind of silence that only mountains know. Number 7. Calico, San Bernardino County. The ghost town. Hiding behind its own tourist version. Rising from the Mojave Desert like a fever dream in red and orange rock, Calico is both a ghost town and something stranger. A place that was rescued from death, turned into a tourist attraction, and now hides its real history behind gift shops and staged gunfights. The original town exploded to life in 1881 after a massive silver strike in the surrounding hills. Within 5 years, Calico had over 500 mines, 1,200 residents, and all the wildness of a desert boomtown. The hills themselves are stained in bands of red and orange and brown, which is where the town got its name. When silver prices crashed in the 1890s, Calico collapsed almost overnight. The mines closed. The buildings rotted for decades. In the 1950s, Walter Knott, the founder of Knott's Berry Farm, bought the ruins and began rebuilding. He restored some buildings, added a few that never existed, and eventually donated the whole thing to San Bernardino County. Today, it operates as a county park with train rides, gift shops, and costumed performers. But here's what most visitors miss. Behind the reconstructed Main Street, in the hills above the tourist zone, the original mines still honeycomb the desert. Hike far enough from the crowds, and you'll find the real Calico tunnels disappearing into hillsides, foundations that were never restored, equipment rusting in arroyos that the tour buses never reach. The real ghost town hides in plain sight behind its own commercial replica. Number 6. Ballarat, Inyo County. Charles Manson's supply town. In the flat emptiness of Panamint Valley, at the base of the jagged Panamint Range, a handful of crumbling adobe buildings and rusting cars mark the site of Ballarat. It's one of the most desolate places in California, and it has one of the most unexpected connections to American criminal history. Ballarat was founded in 1897 to supply the miners working the canyons above. At its peak, it had 500 residents, 7 saloons, 3 hotels, a school, a post office, and a Wells Fargo stop. It lasted barely 20 years before the mines above failed and the town emptied. But the isolation that killed Ballarat also made it useful to people who didn't want to be found. In 1968 and 1969, Charles Manson and his family were living at Barker Ranch in the canyons above, and they came to Ballarat for supplies. The Manson family used this ghost town as a resupply point while planning what would become some of the most notorious murders in American history. Today, the adobe ruins of the old jail still stand. The cemetery holds graves of prospectors who never made it out. Wild burros wander between the broken walls. One resident, sometimes referred to as the town's caretaker, reportedly still lives here. When you pull up and step out of your car, the silence is so complete, it feels like pressure. Number 5. Bombay Beach, Imperial County, the apocalypse that became an art colony. If this video is taking you somewhere unexpected, hit that like button and subscribe because the last 4 entries get darker and stranger from here. On the eastern shore of the Salton Sea sits a place so post-apocalyptic that photographers and filmmakers drive hours into the California desert just to stand in it. Bombay Beach. The Salton Sea was an accident. In 1905, irrigation canals broke open and flooded a desert basin for 2 years, creating California's largest lake by surface area in the middle of the Sonoran Desert. For decades, it was promoted as a resort paradise. The Beach Boys came here. Frank Sinatra came here. Bombay Beach had yacht clubs, vacation homes, and a future that looked genuinely golden. Then, the sea had no outlet, Agricultural runoff poured in, salinity spiked, fish died by the millions. The stench drove tourists away first, then residents. Flooding destroyed entire neighborhoods. The water level rose, swallowing streets. Today, fewer than 300 people remain. They live among ruins. Abandoned trailers rot in the salt air. The beach is covered not with sand, but with the crushed, bleached bones of dead tilapia. The waterline shows the high water marks from the floods, like rings in a bathtub, marking how far the water once rose into someone's living room. But something unexpected happened. Artists found Bombay Beach. Sculptures now rise from the salt flats. Murals cover abandoned buildings. An annual festival brings hundreds of people to this apocalyptic shore every spring. Walking through Bombay Beach feels like witnessing the end of something and the beginning of something else at exactly the same moment. Number 4. Old Shasta, Shasta County. The Queen City, the railroad killed. Before Redding existed, there was Shasta. And for a few years in the 1850s, Shasta was the most important town in all of Northern California. Founded during the gold rush, Shasta sat at the head of the trail leading to the northern mining districts. Everything coming from San Francisco passed through here: supplies, people, news, money. The main street was lined with the longest continuous row of brick buildings in Northern California. Hotels, courthouses, saloons, and general stores served the miners pouring north toward the Trinity and Sacramento rivers. They called it the Queen City of the North. Then, in 1872, the Central Pacific Railroad came through the region. The tracks bypassed Shasta entirely and ran through a smaller settlement down the valley called Poverty Flats. That town was renamed Redding. It boomed. Shasta collapsed. The brick buildings stood empty as everything moved to the railroad. One by one, the businesses that had made Shasta great relocated to wherever the train stopped. The courthouse was eventually abandoned. The main street fell silent. Today, Old Shasta is a California state park. You can walk the original brick row roofless now, open to the sky, the walls still standing after 170 years. The old courthouse has been restored and houses a museum. A row of gallows stands in the backyard, exactly where it always did. Stand in the middle of Old Shasta's main street and look down the row of brick arches, and you can feel the scale of what this place was supposed to become. Then look down the valley at Redding and understand what a single railroad decision can do. Number 3. Randsburg, Kern County. The ghost town that refuses to die in the western Mojave. At the end of a road that doesn't look like it leads anywhere worth going, Randsburg exists in a strange twilight between ghost town and living village. Gold was discovered here in 1895. Within years, the yellow aster mine was producing millions. The town boomed: saloons, hotels, a red light district, a Wells Fargo, a newspaper. At its peak, Randsburg and its neighboring towns of Johannesburg and Red Mountain formed one of the most productive mining districts in California. Unlike most ghost towns, Randsburg never completely died. A small population held on through every bust, waiting for the next boom, and sometimes it came. Lead and zinc mining kept a few families employed through the world wars. By the 1970s, the town had found a strange second life as a destination for people who wanted authenticity rather than restoration. Today, about 100 people live here. The general store has been operating continuously since 1896, with an original soda fountain still serving root beer floats. The White House Saloon still sells drinks in a building that hasn't fundamentally changed in over a century. The streets are unpaved. Every structure is original. Nothing has been sanitized or rebuilt for tourists. Randsburg is what Bodie would look like if some of the people had just decided to stay. Number 2. Manzanar, Llano County. The town America built to imprison its own citizens. In the Owens Valley, between the Sierra Nevada and the Llano Mountains, there is a place that most people drive past on Highway 395 without stopping. A stone guardhouse at the entrance, A few reconstructed buildings, the wind blowing hard across the valley floor. This is Manzanar, and it is one of the most important and most painful abandoned places in America. In February 1942, 2 months after the attack on Pearl Harbor, President Franklin Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066. It authorized the forced removal of over 120,000 people of Japanese descent from the west coast of the United States. Most of them were American citizens. They had committed no crime. They were given days to sell everything they owned and report to assembly centers carrying only what they could carry. Manzanar opened in March 1942. At its peak, over 10,000 men, women, and children were held here behind barbed wire, watched by armed guards in wooden towers. Summers were brutally hot. Winters were freezing. Dust storms swept through the valley so intensely that fine sand blew through the walls of the barracks and coated everything inside: food, clothing, sleeping children. The internees built gardens. They organized schools and churches. They started baseball leagues and newspapers. They created, in the most constrained circumstances imaginable, something resembling the ordinary life that had been taken from them. Manzanar closed in November 1945. The internees were released with $25 and a bus ticket. Most had lost everything. Their homes had been sold, their businesses taken over. Many never spoke about what had happened. For decades, the site was nearly unmarked. It wasn't until 1992 that Manzanar was designated a National Historic Site. Today, you can walk through a reconstructed barracks block, see the remains of the Japanese rock gardens the internees built as an act of dignity, and stand at the cemetery monument inscribed with Japanese characters that translate to Soul Consoling Tower. This is a ghost town unlike the others on this list. The people who lived here did not leave because the gold ran out. They were brought here against their will. And the reason most people have never visited it has nothing to do with geography. It has to do with shame. Number 1. Llano del Rio, Los Angeles County, the Socialist Utopia. That the desert defeated. In the sun-scorched flats of the Antelope Valley, about 70 miles north of Los Angeles, you'll find the ruins of what was supposed to be paradise. Not a mining paradise, not a ranch empire, a socialist paradise. In 1914, a lawyer and political activist named Job Harriman purchased land in the Mojave and announced that he was going to build a cooperative colony, a place where workers shared everything equally. Land, labor, profit, food. No bosses, no landlords, no exploitation. Just people building something together, on purpose, for each other. Harriman had nearly been elected the first socialist mayor of Los Angeles in 1911. He lost. He took his followers to the desert instead. Within 2 years, over 1,000 people called Llano del Rio home. They built a hotel, a print shop, a cannery, a bakery, a library, a rabbitry, and a socialist newspaper. Children attended school while their parents worked the alfalfa fields. There was a mandolin orchestra. There were dances on May Day. For a brief, impossible moment, the dream seemed real. Then the desert made its position clear. Water rights disputes crippled everything. The wells couldn't support the growing population. The surrounding ranchers controlled the water sources and had no interest in helping a commune of socialists succeed. Internal arguments over leadership tore the community apart. By 1918, just 4 years after it began, Llano del Rio was bankrupt. The colonists packed up and moved to Louisiana to try again. Today, if you pull over on the highway and walk into the scrub, you'll find the old stone assembly hall, still standing, its arched doorways intact, framing nothing but empty sky. Rusted pipes jut from the sand where irrigation lines once ran. The remains of a swimming pool sit cracked in the desert. It is one of the only socialist utopian colonies in American history that left physical ruins behind. A monument to the idea that people could build something different sitting in the same desert that proved they couldn't. Walk through Llano del Rio on a quiet morning. The arches are still beautiful. The silence is enormous. And somewhere in the sand beneath your feet are the foundations of a world that people genuinely believed was possible. 9 ghost towns. A town frozen in time since the 1940s, where every dish is still on the table. A silver mine that secretly funded the construction of Los Angeles. A tourist ghost town hiding a real ghost town in the hills behind it. Charles Manson's supply depot. An apocalyptic art colony on the shores of a dying sea. The Queen City of Northern California. Killed by a railroad decision. A town that refuses to admit it's dead. A concentration camp built for American citizens. And a socialist utopia that the California desert swallowed whole. California doesn't present itself as a state with ghost towns. It presents itself as a state with futures, new starts, second chances, gold at the end of every road. But the roads go both directions, and behind every gleaming California present, there's a California past that didn't make it sitting in the desert or up in the mountains or at the edge of a dying sea, waiting for someone to stop and look. If this video made you see California differently, share it with someone who needs to see it. Drop a comment and tell us which of these places you'd most want to visit. We'll see you in the next one.